Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching. The channel's called Ratchet. My name's Andrew, and on this episode, I give you a massive update on the state of the bodywork. Run the title. I've cracked on with the driver's side, as you can see behind me, but what I have filmed is how I've then done the right-hand side. But typically, it's the right-hand side that's been the real problematic side. So there's been a lot more issues that I've had to deal with. So it will give you a real good insight of, all of the things I've had to work around. So what I'm planning on doing, giving you a quick run through of how the driver's side sits, give you a talk over of a few little bits and pieces and how that's shaping up nicely. And then we'll get down to the real nitty gritty of me actually carrying out that same work to the passenger side, so you can see what's been involved. So let's crack on with that. You can see the front filler cap has had a thin skim of filler. It is shaping up quite nicely, moving down to the front edge of the door and the rear edge of the clam. A lot of work has gone into that to get that shaped up nicely. The bobbins have been repositioned, the catches have also been repositioned. There's a nice meeting junction of the windscreen, door corner and rear edge of the front clam. That's worked out quite tidily. And then coming up around the top of the door, that has all been gapped and that's shaping up well. The very top of the door needed a thin skim of filler to bring it up to the same height as the main body of the Spider. You can see there the rear clam has had the initial slice put in it to bring it to the back of the Spider, and you can see where I've just been working body levels. And along the bottom of the door has been gapped. The taper of the door detail has also been worked on to get it to line through nice and smoothly, but it's shaping up well. And then here you can see overall just how the door's sitting in the hole, and yeah, the mountain of work that I've still got to do on the rear clam. I've got the passenger's door set as best I can, which now gives me the starting point to start gapping the door. So initially I had just loosely fitted the door in the hole when I set the Spider and trim the openings, or trim the door to suit the new opening to get it very roughly into shape. So now what I've done is I've got it properly fitted into place. So I have readjusted the striker catch plate for the door lock. I had to readjust the main hinges on the front doors to accommodate the new position of the door also. I have fitted the door rubbers. There's no point gapping a door, then fitting the rubber seal, only to discover that A, it doesn't fit, or the door doesn't fit because of the size of the door rubbers, or in this case, what they are prone to is the fact that when your rubber's fitted, this top edge of the door comes slightly proud because the rubbers are so plump. So now I've given you a brief little run through of where I am with this passenger door. I've got my gapping tool wherever it is, can't find it at the moment. So I'm going to start going round, basically working the gaps and getting them to the, I think it's about 4 or 5 mil gap tool that I've got. It's just made up of a couple of pieces of metal. What you'll see here, and a problem that I've always had with this car, is this front edge of the door stands proud of the Spider, and that is the same along this door edge. So I think there's going to be a little bit of drastic cutting that I need to do to get that laying perfectly flush. But what I'll do is I'll try and take down as much as possible with the DA, the fiberglass, to, hopefully get it in the realms of flush before I do anything really drastic. So just by using the DA in the first instance, just to get the shuts roughed down to level. It's the quickest and easiest way of doing it. You can see where I'm lifting the door slightly to fit it into the aperture. That's because there's a bit of play in the main door hinge. I'm trying to get a replacement from Tornado at the moment. And then with the long block, I'm just fine tuning some of the edges just so I can get it that consistent gap that I'm trying to work with. And then on the back edge and the back edge of the door, as I've done elsewhere, just taking a DA just to rough it down to initial level with some 40 grit paper. And then I go through and then fine tune with a long block as necessary. So it's all very similar method and something that does seem to be working well for me. The main problem with this door, like I've touched on before, is if I get down to this sort of angle, you can basically see how much it stands proud, and there's no way around. I don't want to build up the spider in filler to bring it up to that front edge because it's just not something I want to do. Driver's side wise, you know, the feel of the spider is very similar side to side, so I don't suddenly want to bring up this corner, you know, 5mm or so, because it will be very obvious. So I think I've come up with a plan and we'll see if it works. So what I'm going to do is slice along here and around to about here, which is where it stops standing proud. So if I take out a 3 or 4mm slice through here, I may have to cut along here. I don't want to touch the window surround at all because I don't want to be messing around with that. So I might have to put a slice in here somewhere, possibly a slice running along the top. And that will basically allow me to push down on the front edge of the door to then line up against spider. So if you can imagine, you know, me taking 3 or 4mm out of the frame, that will then allow me to push this down 3 or 4mm and then get it glassed into place. And yeah, taking a slice along here, certainly I don't think the whole length, will then allow, you know, a certain amount of movement in this top piece to bend it down and get it in the position I need. So it's far from ideal, but it's what I'm working with and it needs to be right. So, well, let's have a go and see what happens. I'll admit, instead of worrying about camera angles, I didn't record me chopping the door top. I just wanted to focus on getting that done rather than trying not to block a camera shot and not concentrating on what I was meant to be doing. So I'll show you the inside, but let me show you the outside first because that is the important bit. So what I have done is put in a couple of pie cuts. So as if by magic, with a little bit of pressure to this outer corner, the whole front edge just nicely falls down to where it should do, to be in line with the spider. Now, with sufficient pressure to get the line that I need, I will just have to rework this little junction here with a few little levels, you know, packing up on the inside, blending through on the outside, but it's more than workable. And I've had to put in a much smaller slice along the door top than I first thought. So what I'm going to do now is get this fixed in position, or get this corner fixed in position, channel out around this line here, and then work in some fiberglass and just get it fixed back, or start to get it fixed back together. So from initial results, or from the initial view of how things are going to be shaping up, I'd say that's an absolute result. So a new day, and the fiberglass has dried on the inside, so you can see where I've clamped it down in place, and then just put some fiberglass around the underside of the frame. So what I'll do is pop off these C-clamps, and hopefully it should hold the shape of where it needs to sit. If I take you closer, you will now see that that front edge is now nice and flat with the edge of the spider. So what I'll go ahead and do now is gap the remainder of the door, work these levels a little bit just with the DA initially, just to get them running through, and then they would be in a position for a thin skim of filler.
The next day.
So I have got the top of the door gapped there or thereabouts, working the front edge of the door just to pull it through a little bit, flush as steel with the front of the spider. So that is basically taking care of the top and the back edge of the door and a partial bit of this front A-pillar. Now, to progress down to this front edge, I need to get the clam fixed into position so I can start working with some fixed panel gaps rather than a movable feast. But before I can do that, I need to get the sill into place. Then I can fit my locating bobbins and also the front catch. So before I can do any of that, I had to smooth over all of the previous old holes where the bobbins and catch is fixed to, because those holes would all be redundant. Moving down to the back, I've made good where the large battery box used to sit. So I've infilled this portion here with new fiberglass and then some new fixing holes for the sill. So I want to make these sills bolt on and bolt off. Previously they were riveted and I possibly think bonded, maybe not. But anyway, I want these to be easily removable should I need to access anything for any reason. So I'll use some nice fixings and fasteners to fix the seals into place. So where I've drilled these holes, they'll be riv nutted below. So now I've got the seal clecoed into place, I can now go ahead and fit my bobbins and the latch, so I can then get the front clam located into place properly. So then I can start looking at where I stand with the body lines and start chopping it around and body working it as necessary. So with a little bit of camera magic, bobbins, catch and body spacer is in place. So now when I bring down the front clam, the bobbins take out a bit of twist that was on this front edge. So now if I can latch the body, you can now see what I've got to work with. So bottom edge is pretty reasonable. I just need to square up the shut lines. The gap along the bottom of the door, certainly at the front, needs some work. It tapers out to quite a nice gap there. But the main one is if we look down sort of the flank, you can see how much the door projects. So I'm going to have to do some wizardry to get that fitting nicely. Let's give it one more of these. Ta-da! After some mucking around with the actual clam, some fiberglass paste, a little bit of filler, there we go. A really nicely gapped and aligned front clam to front door edge. I still need to work this little meeting junction a little bit better, if I cut to the driver's side, you can see the sort of meeting junction that I'm starting to work up, where all of the lines just nicely run into each other. I'm trying to get that worked out into the passenger side. The bottom edge is still fairly rough at the moment, and I've just started working on the tapered flare into the spider. This is what I'm dealing with on the passenger side. And basically this is the worst edge that I'm having to deal with, which is more than savable. So, you know, this is a result of me buying a pre-finished car that had already been gapped and filled and chopped around to a certain extent to get all the gaps and things, you know, in a position that they were happy with. Then obviously me taking it all apart, moving everything around again, and trying to refit everything. You know, I was bound to come up with something like this. Now, I'm personally happy with how the rear clam is sitting. The line across the top edge is really nice. Dimensionally, taking some check dimensions, everything is sitting as it should. So, you know, for whatever reason, I've just ended up with this front edge that I need to sort out. I'll put a slice in the front edge of the rear clam, get that spaced, and then get it glassed back into position. So if I say it quick enough, I'll get it done quickly. But yeah, come and join me for the process of this one. So after marking off where I wanted to cut, I'm using a 1mm thick metal cutting disc just to run down the front edge of the rear clam, just trying to keep as straight and as nice as possible, just while I run down the edge into the scallop of the rear clam and then down along the bottom edge. The nicer I make this cut at the initial stage, the easier it is for me to patch it in with the fiberglass after. So nothing difficult about this at all, just taking your time, try not to lose any fingers, and like I say, try to get that decent first cut. So now I've put the slice in the front edge, I just use some ABS plastic offcuts and some screws to then space the front of the clam. So now I've got that set into position, I'll stick some masking tape over the front face that you can see, and then from the back side I'll just use some chopped strand and resin just to glass it all back together. And here it is with some P38 just over the top, just to start the bodywork process. But you can see it's sort of starting to align quite nicely. You can see at the top where the door meets the spider meets the rear clam that I've got some alignment work to do there. So that'll take a bit of mucking around. And then I need to get the bobbins on the sill to pull the rear clam out slightly and to get that aligning nicely. I think that will do for this episode. Some reasonable amount of progress made to the bodywork, you know, front clam, spider, doors, started working on the rear clam. Obviously still a long way to go, but just keep plugging away and I will get there in the end. Next episode I will be chopping up the rear clam. I've got a couple nice little custom touches that I want to put into that ahead of some slightly more drastic work, which I will cover off in the next video. It's more issues that I've highlighted, or more issues that I've uncovered, which means some drastic chopping for the rear clam, but that's not going to affect a few little bits and pieces in between, and it's all manageable, so we'll get there in the end. So you can follow me on Instagram, Ratchet GT40. Please subscribe to the channel if you have liked what you've seen. you can click up in the top right hand corner and that will take you through to a playlist of all of the previous videos that I have released. So if this is the first one you've seen, you can go back and get yourself caught up on everything else that's been going on. So up until the next video, which I hope won't be too long in the making, I will catch you next time.